Finally, there is a Democratic presidential ticket with real balance. They have a socialist and a communist. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. This is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, we're taping this on Tuesday, August 6th, and this morning the Kamala Harris campaign let it be known that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz would be her vice presidential running mate. Now, I got to tell you, all the smart money, including mine, right up until about 48 hours ago, was on Harris picking Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, as her running mate. In fact, he canceled big fundraisers in the Hamptons this weekend, and he's a moderate. He's super popular in Pennsylvania. He would have nailed down the Keystone State, because without Pennsylvania, Harris can't win, period. And so he looked like a great choice, because his approval rating is plus 18 points with the voters of Pennsylvania. I mean, they really like Shapiro. So, of course, Harris had to go with Walz, the communist governor of Minnesota. I got to tell you, there's some real ugliness here, gentlemen. Van Jones, I don't remember him from the Obama administration. Yeah. He was on CNN this morning saying that picking Walz was Harris, and this is a quote, caving into some of these darker parts in the party in terms of appeasing anti-Jewish bigots that have gotten marbled into this party. Again, that's Van Jones, not me. And there's just a lot not to like about Tim Walz. We're going to talk about some of that today. Bill, it turns out he was in the Army. I didn't realize this. He almost made one of the top levels of Master Sergeant, but he quit. Tom Behrens, a retired command sergeant major who had placed Walz on a deployment to Iraq, said as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit because he didn't want to deploy. There's also the
Stop right there.
Oh, yeah?
He would have been more appropriate for the director of the Secret Service.
Indeed.
That's what they should have done with him.
Turned and ran. Brave, brave Sir Robin. There's also the matter of his 1995 DUI. I don't usually like getting into these old personal things, but this one is relevant because he's still lying about it. After getting pulled over to a 96 in his Mazda in a 55, he submitted to a breath test which pegged his blood alcohol level at 0.128. Bravo. Well above, it's more than 50% above the legal limit. And he made these claims about being deaf as an excuse, and he's still telling lies about this thing.
He was too deaf to see the speed limit sign.
Don't you hate it when that happens? As Minnesota governor, this is where we really get down to brass tacks. Minnesotans visited food shelves in 2023 more than any year in recent history. More residents are also relying on food stamps than in any year since 2016. And when I call him a communist, listen to this. He set up a hotline to monitor compliance with his 2020 stay-at-home order, and it generated thousands of reports from Minnesotans who snitched on their neighbors for things like playing basketball in a park, walking their dogs, and throwing small parties. The hotline was launched in March of that year, and it kept running through November, long after his stay-at-home order, totally illegal, by the way, had been eliminated. And the last 2 years of administration featured some of the most extreme and irresponsible policies we've ever seen in his state, according to a Republican congresswoman from Minnesota. $10 billion in tax increases, unsustainable and unaffordable 40% increase in state spending, new fees on online orders, massive cost increases for Uber and Lyft rides, expensive and extreme energy mandates that'll drive up electric bills, a gas tax that's going to go up every year automatically. What else do we have here? And, you're going to love this one. His health department rationed life-saving COVID drugs based on race. BIPOC status earned more points than hypertension in the state's allocation system. It earned the same amount of points as age, BMI, diabetes, and kidney disease. Just, being a person of color. Bill, he's a perfect match for Kamala Harris, isn't he?
You took the words right out of my mouth. A more perfect candidate you could not find. I was somewhat worried that she might do the sensible thing. I was not thinking it was likely, but I thought it was possible. Babylon Bee, by the way, today has a photograph of Josh Shapiro, and with a tattoo on his neck, and it says, turns out that Shapiro got his death to Israel tattoo for nothing. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Shapiro really did sell his soul, by the way, over the last week or so.
We're playing identity politics, right? So Harris had to come down, and this is what I've been working on in this strategy. I had a kind of an eye infection. I would have done it earlier, but I'm working on a number of sort of episodes on how to beat Harris, and the first one is called "Get Her Out of the Gray." What I mean by that is don't let her have things both ways. Make her commit to a position that either loses the middle of the country or loses the progressive base, one or the other. The first issue is, are you a socialist? This guy is a dream candidate for the good guys, and it's more than all of the things you listed, Steve. It's more than the sum. The nomination of her. Or the selection of her vice presidential running mate is greater than the sum of his parts. He's appalling on every issue that Americans find deleterious to the country. But the best part about it is she picked him. That's the most important thing. This is universally in American politics prior to the election. The selection of your vice presidential candidate is considered to be your first test of your presidential ability. It's considered to be your first big decision should you hold office. And for her to go running as far left as it is possible to go in order to pick up the battleground state of Minnesota, which is the only state that Reagan did not carry in 1984, when she could have had Pennsylvania on the table, is a sign that this campaign, which has developed some momentum and the Harris campaign, because they're playing the basement strategy, don't let her say anything that's not on the teleprompter, give her a couple of applaud lines and get her the hell out of there before she opens her mouth, it's over before it begins. It's over before it begins. You put this guy up against J.D. Vance, and not even on debate skills, just put their life stories on the line against J.D. Vance. And we'll see which one of them has more equity due to them. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it is a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. Again, Bill, it wasn't until I think sometime Sunday that stuff started percolating up in my news stream. Well, I take a news coma from Friday night through Sunday afternoon, so it might have started before then, that maybe it wasn't going to be Shapiro after all. It had been narrowed down to him and Walz, and Shapiro had done something or hadn't polled well, with Dearbornistan.
No, Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt you on your own conclusion. The reason Shapiro could not have been selected for Kamala Harris is because his name is Shapiro. Yeah. That's the reason why he couldn't have been the nominee. Yeah, they have to decide. They have to decide whether or not they're going to go with their Palestinian radicals or whether they're going to try to hold on to the Jewish vote. And they made their decision.
Well, Scott, let's get into that a little deeper with you then, since the Democrats are forcing us to play identity politics. What does it tell you about the Harris campaign that they felt they needed to lock down the Muslim vote in Michigan, which frankly is turned into an anti-Semitic vote in a lot of places across the country, particularly college campuses, rather than picking a vice president with more centrist appeal?
And the youth vote.
So you're saying that picking the Minnesota guy is going to help them in Michigan? Is that your case?
Yeah, it will. It helps lock down as the old joke goes, the Dearbornistan vote.
Dearbornistan. Well, I would first say congratulations to Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania has had a hard time getting a decent governor. And even though this guy plays on the wrong side of the field, as far as I'm concerned, Shapiro, by all accounts, seems to be one of the better governors who's ever served in Pennsylvania. And it's wisdom on his part to not lash himself to the to the Hindenburg of the Harris campaign. I don't know whether they're going to win or not, but I think in the long run, history will judge you harshly if you're connected with that enterprise. I know he's already being sold by some of his friends for other positions and saying, wow, he'd make it a great attorney general. Actually, I just hope he hangs in there in Pennsylvania. Now, I say that as somebody who has fled to Texas, where we have a Republican governor, of which I am deeply grateful. The way you're portraying Tim Walz is not the way they're portraying Tim Walz, obviously.
Of course not.
Yeah. And I think if I remember correctly, they said he served something like 24 years in the Army National Guard. Most of his service involved more like disaster response things rather than...
Yeah, National Guard stuff.
Yeah, rather than military campaigns. The 1995 DWI arrest, he talks about as a wake-up call from him when he got home, basically his wife said, you have a responsibility to people to not do stupid stuff. And he hasn't been a drinker since then. Apparently, he also doesn't drink coffee, but he and J.D. Vance both love them some Diet Mountain Dew. So they have that. So they have that in common. Anyway, they're pitching. I mean, the New York Times, I think, referred to Tim Walz as a plain-spoken progressive, or maybe that was the Wall Street Journal. But they're playing up this idea that he's, anybody from the Midwest for some reason is wholesome. And we talked about in our backstage episode that he spent some time in Mankato, and if I remember correctly, Mankato was like the big city in Little House on the Prairie. So for some reason people think you have honest, solid American values if you don't live in a coastal region. But, plain-spoken progressive is still a progressive. And as far as I could tell, the only thing that he spoke plainly about is they think it's just adorable that he referred to the Trump-Vance ticket as weird. Like the word, for some reason, that made him charming. I'm not sure I get the appeal. He was a football coach that apparently took his team to the state championship, something that hadn't previously happened with that high school football team. Yeah. And by the way, while he was doing that and being a social studies teacher at high school, he was also the faculty advisor to the student club that was called something like the Gay Straight Alliance. And so he was their faculty advisor and apparently did a bang-up job at that. He was tougher on the border, they say, when he was a congressman, but when he started running for governor, his tune changed and he got more liberal on a number of issues. Tim Walz is all on board with the Kamala Harris, more abortions more frequently, pledge. Nancy Pelosi calls him middle of the road. Nancy Pelosi says, we shouldn't. She was
deep into her Franza.
Yeah, she said we shouldn't be. She said she just didn't get it how people were saying that he was from the left because he was straight down the middle in her view. But with the long track record of success among vice presidents from his state, including Hubert Humphrey and Walter Mondale, I think we have only hope and best wishes for Mr. Walz going forward.
Something like that. One of the things this nomination of Walz tells me is that the Democrats really have given up on Florida. It's truly a red state right now. Because one of the most famous things Walz has said recently is when he describes socialism as just being neighborliness. And if you try to tell that to the Cuban Americans of South Florida, you have just written... You have written off that whole state. You can just forget it. They know what socialism is, and it ain't very neighborly. I actually saved the big ammo on Walz for myself here, because why not? It's my segment. And that is his most shameful act. He helped stoke the 2020 George Floyd riots in his own state, in his own city of Minneapolis. And Kamala Harris, now at the top of the ticket he's running on, actually went on Twitter to help raise bail money for the criminals, the guys setting fires and all the rest that Walz helped to instigate and then later, of course, set back loose on the people of Minneapolis and the people of his own state. So, yeah, the two of them are a perfect match, and if they don't go down in flames, I'm afraid we all will. And that is your Right Angle on That, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.